death, and most skeletal figure you see in this photo is one successful, free, and well-known beauty, Blanche Monnier. She was found trapped inside of a padlocked room. The conditions she lived in were utter filth. The walls, sleeping area, and floor were covered in old rotten food, and even human feces. There were bugs crawling all around the room, and even on her body. Her malnourished body left her being only 55 pounds on the day of her escape. But how did she get there? She was madly in love with the man she planned to marry, but her mother did not approve. And when the love of her life proposed to her, her mother told her to refuse, but she said yes anyways. The mother was so angry at her daughter's defiance, she threw her in the family basement and locked her down for 25 years. It was reported during her 25 years of torture, she hadn't even seen the sunlight once. Sadly, upon release, too much damage was done. She could no longer live in normal society, so she spent her last years alive in a psychiatric institute. A lifetime of happiness stripped away due to a mother's selfishness.
Yo, what's up? Here's some scary facts about our world that you probably didn't want to know, part 35. The youngest girl to ever give birth was only 5 years old. What I want to know is who did it and why. There is a biological weapon that contains a virus, and if it is released, it could kill the entire human population. According to a theory known as the Troxler effect, if you spend too much time looking into a mirror, you may end up seeing a monster or a different distorted version of yourself. And lastly, this 46-year-old man tracked down, throttled, and choked a 13-year-old to death because he was killing him too many times in Call of Duty. These facts, along with so many others, just go to show how crazy our world is.
These are the most haunted places in the Philippines. Before I start listing them down, you do need to know that for all paranormal investigators, the country of Philippines is on their to-do list, as it's known worldwide for its haunted destinations. Starting at number 4, Fort Santiago, Intramuros in Manila. The walls of Intramuros turn into something terrifying, reminding you of the dark Spanish era. Thousands of civilians and soldiers were tortured and killed in Fort Santiago during World War II. It may be a hot tourist spot, but at night, the strange noises that are heard in this fort tends to keep visitors and tourists away. Number 3, Clark Air Base Hospital in Pampanga. This abandoned building used to be a military hospital during World War II and the Vietnam War. Paranormal investigators have confirmed that demons have conquered this property. It is commonly visited by YouTubers, but things always go wrong. The jinns that are specifically in this hospital are a little more protective towards their home. Number 2, Manila Film Center, Pasay City. This building is potentially one of Asia's most haunted destinations. When a building is haunted in the United States, you will hear noises. But when a building is haunted in the Philippines, it is a whole nother level. This film center was abandoned in the 80s after it collapsed during construction. It killed all the workers and none of their bodies were retrieved. And ever since, visitors were always warned to stay out of this building. The bad energy in this place spiritually drains you. And finally, number 1, Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City. Baguio City is ranked as the world's most haunted city as a whole. The Diplomat Hotel goes way back to 1911. No priests were able to cleanse this place. After many deaths inside this hotel, the business ceased its operations in 1987. Many paranormal investigators from around the world swore that they would never visit this building again. The Philippines is a beautiful country, but it is well known for its horrifying stories. You tell me, what country should I do next?
Just a few weeks ago, people were freaking out over this picture that was captured from NASA's surveillance on Mars. And I hear you, 100%, it looks like a crashed UFO, but let's break down what this actually might be. This is more than likely a component that detached from the rover landing known as the back shell. It's a piece that was designed to both protect and then detach during NASA's landing, and most likely hit the surface of Mars going at around 80 miles per hour. And although the photos look real sci-fi, there is an explanation for this, and it was most likely very helpful for the engineers who helped construct this component to see how it actually handled the impact.
You often hear Close Encounters stories about black-eyed kids, but have you ever heard of somebody who actually let them in? Here's the story of a couple who actually let them in, what happened while they were there, and the aftermath. Paul and Brenda lived in a small town on a dirt road deep in the country. It had been snowing for several hours, and Brenda wasn't surprised when she heard a bang on her door at 2 o'clock in the morning. Living out in the sticks like they did, this happened quite often. Someone's car would break down and they would go knock on their door. As she peered out through the curtains, she noticed that her motion lights had turned on, and she could see a pair of footprints leading up to her house from the road. And there was no sign of any cars on the road in front of their home. She could, however, make out 2 figures standing at her front door. The banging continued as she woke up her husband, Paul. Paul got dressed quickly and answered the door with Brenda standing behind him. On the porch stood 2 small children, a boy and a girl, both around 8 years old. Brenda noticed that they were not dressed for winter weather, and normally her first instinct would be to rush them in the house to get them warmed up. But this time she felt a strong hesitation. There was something off about these kids. Their haircuts were strange and out of fashion. The boy had a bit of an outdated bowl cut, and the girl had long hair with short, blunt bangs. Their clothes also seemed to be unfashionable for the time, and they wouldn't make eye contact with the couple. But because it was so cold outside, they let them in anyway. Paul let them in while Brenda rushed off to the kitchen to make hot cocoa for the children. She was listening to Paul's conversation with the children while he asked them about their parents. "Our parents will be here soon," said in a bit of a sing-song voice. The girl's voice gave Brenda the creeps, even from the other room. Paul asked, "What happened? Did the car break down?" "Our parents will be here soon," she said as her and her brother sat down on the sofa across from him on his favorite chair. She heard him ask, "Was there an accident?" Again, the little girl said, "Our parents will be here soon." Brenda felt very uneasy about the kids' appearance, their behavior, their strange answers, and something else she couldn't quite figure out. As she was busy making the hot cocoa, she realized that her 3 cats were nowhere to be seen, which was odd because they normally have to chase them away from new guests. Only their one cat named Percival stood there and watched the children. His fur was raised along his spine, and his tail was poofed out twice his size, pointing down. He hissed at the children and stiffly walked backwards out of their sight. Walking back in with the cocoa, she noticed Paul was sitting there obviously in pain. She quickly set down the cups in front of the children and knelt down by Paul. He said to her, "I'm dizzy, that's all." As she turned toward the children, they finally made eye contact with them. The children's eyes were black as night. Almost that the children sensed the jig was up. The girl stood up, pulling her brother up with her. "We need to use the bathroom," said in almost the same sing-song voice. Terrified, Brenda was still kneeling down by Paul. She pointed towards the bathroom, through the hallway. As the children walked past her, she looked into Paul's face. She could tell that he had seen their eyes as well. Just then, she noticed Paul's nose started to bleed profusely. Really weird because he's never had a nosebleed in his entire life. Brenda ran into the kitchen to get some tissues. Just then, the power went out, casting them into complete darkness, the type of darkness that only people from the country are familiar with. In the dark, Brenda sensed movement and turned around and noticed the children were standing behind her in the doorway. She only noticed them for an instant while a car pulled into the driveway, casting their silhouette. She saw them standing side by side, holding hands and staring at her. She was overtaken with fear and was frozen in place. Just then, the girl said, "Our parents are here." Then the 2 black-eyed children walked past Brenda, out the front door, leaving it gaping open. Brenda found her way to Paul, and they both rushed to the front window. Because of the headlights from the sedan idling in their driveway, they were able to see the children out in front of their home. They also saw 2 very tall men standing out in front of the car in dark suits. As the children approached the car, the men opened the back doors for them to get in. The couple couldn't do anything but watch them all get into the sedan and drive off into the cold, snowy night. The family then went through hell for the next few months afterwards. 3 of their cats went missing. Percival, the one that hissed at the children, was found dead laying on the floor in the kitchen. Paul developed regular, intense nosebleeds. Brenda also developed nosebleeds, and both developed dizzy spells on and off for months. Paul developed skin cancer, even though he's never spent much time in the sun or in tanning beds. Fortunately, all the symptoms went away and Paul recovered from his skin cancer. To this day, Brenda is certain everything that happened that night was because of those children.
This is the darkest thing to ever happen on a movie set. This may be the scariest thing that has ever happened on a movie set. Now, we all know the movie The Wizard of Oz. It's considered one of the all-time great movies ever. Behind the scenes of this movie, some of the most horrific things that have ever happened on a movie set took place. To start things out, there's a conspiracy theory that while Dorothy and all of her friends are walking down the yellow brick road, if you look in the background, you can see a munchkin hanging himself. And past that, this is the darkest part of everything. Actress Judy Garland endured hell while she was on the movie set. The directors believed that Judy's breasts were too large, so they would tape them down in an extremely painful way. Already awful. And past that, they would give her sleeping pills to help her sleep at night after her 15 to 16 hour work days. And then when she woke up exhausted, they would give her speed. It was a very different time, obviously, but this is not okay by any way. But look, if you do want to watch other movies like that, then look no further than my friends at ExpressVPN. You guys remember back in the day, like when Netflix first started and it had every single movie, and now it just has like the bare minimum. Thankfully with ExpressVPN, that's an issue of yesterday, baby. You see, by using ExpressVPN, you can change your location of where you are on Earth so that you can access Netflix and other streaming services in different parts of the world and get those movies. So like say you change it to England, you can watch Harry Potter. I want to thank ExpressVPN very much, and I want to make sure you guys go check them out, because trust me, it'll be absolutely worth it. But I have something pretty dark to talk to you about, because
footage may just appear to be a normal man walking around his lawn. However, it's actually proof of an insurance and disability fraud case. The man walking in the video had previously claimed to be paralyzed. The man had served in the military and had suffered injuries that had left him allegedly paralyzed.
I'm paralyzed. I have a TBI.
A foundation that was dedicated to housing disabled vets had given the veteran and his family a home for free. After they moved in, neighbors of the veteran started seeing the supposedly paralyzed veteran walking in his backyard. They alerted the foundation about the veteran, and the foundation tried to get in contact with the veteran via phone, but their calls were never answered by the veteran. After one of the neighbors was able to take a video of the veteran walking, the foundation sent an investigator who tried to speak with the veteran, but the veteran stayed in his bedroom and did not come out. A few days after the investigator had visited, the family moved out of the home without telling anyone and disappeared.
I'm sorry, the chills I get when I look at this photo. This picture was taken by Tom Gravit and Sam Petch back in 2013. Not like the creepiest setup, but they were out night exploring and they thought what they stumbled upon must have been like an abandoned home just in the woods or something. But I want you to look closer. He only realized after the flash went off that there was a man standing there just facing the side of the house for no known reason. It's never been clear what exactly happened to Tom and Sam after that night, as they were never found. Evidence that was collected from the scene where the phone was located suggested that there was probably some kind of a struggle or that things got violent. Even though this is sort of cloaked in mystery here, there's still this question. Undoubtedly, this was the person who was probably responsible for their disappearance, but who was it? What did they stumble upon when they found this home in the woods?
Tulsa Massacre. Starting because of a lynch mob wasn't handed dick, a black teen accused of assaulting a girl when he accidentally stepped on her foot, the mob of whites tried to break into the National Guard armory for the weapons to then break into where Dick was held and kill him. The mob had grew to about 1,500 angry white people when city officials responded by deputizing people in the mob and giving them weapons, and in less than 24 hours time, what was once one of the wealthiest and peaceful black neighborhoods was burnt to the ground. Around 1,300 black homes burned down, over 200 looted and possessions stolen. Black-owned businesses were targeted, destroying newspaper outlets, a school, a library, a hospital, churches, hotels, and any other known businesses that was owned by black people. This mob left 8,000 black people homeless, and the government claimed 36 people were killed in all this. Yet, It's likely the number is around 300, because there was obviously a massive cover-up, with fake stories of Dick, state militia, and police burning any evidence that surfaced about the massacre, and that's why these striking photos and recounts were so little seen and
2
heard.
weeks ago, I celebrated my 107th birthday.
Was taken before disaster part 2. The photo in front of you seems extremely normal, just a man and his child taking the picture. But pay attention to the red car to the right of him. Seconds after this photo was taken, the car exploded due to a bombing. The man and the child did survive, but the photographer and 28 other people sadly died that day, and around 220 people were injured.
Yo, what's up? Here's some scary facts about our world that you probably didn't want to know, part 38. The reason dogs love chew toys so much, and the reason why they like squeaking them and ripping them apart, is because it simulates them killing their prey. It is said that if you consistently don't get enough sleep, that your brain may begin to start eating itself, so get your rest. Eating 4 tablespoons of salt at once could kill an adult, and eating 3 could kill a child. Please don't do anything with this information. This is extremely terrifying, but 1/3 of the murders that occur in the United States go unsolved.
People now think there's drone footage that confirms that this ghost is real. Oh my god. So since the 1980s, locals in Cannock Chase in the UK have claimed to see the ghost of a black-eyed little girl in the woods. Multiple witnesses have reported seeing a little girl with soulless black eyes and a crooked neck popping out of the woods. Some say she's searching for her mother, and others say that she feels demonic. But now reports are saying that a drone may have caught a photo of her. This is the image that was captured this week, and people are saying they think this is the girl. Here's a close-up image of it where you can see her hair, you can see her crooked neck, and you can see the black eyes. But what do you think? Is it her?
You won't believe these things actually happened. Violet Jessup was a nurse and ocean liner stewardess who gained the nickname Miss Unsinkable due to her remarkable survival of 2 shipwrecks. In 1912, she was aboard the Titanic when it met its infamous end. And then in 1916, she was on the sister ship, the Britannic, which suffered a similar fate. Jessup was also reported to have been on a 3rd ship, the Olympic. In Edgar Allan Poe's 1838 novel, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, a 4-member crew becomes stranded at sea without food or water. To stay alive, the crew makes the difficult conclusion to resort to cannibalism. To determine who would be sacrificed, they used a method of drying straws. Tragically, the character selected and ultimately consumed was named Richard Parker. In 1884, a real ship became stranded at sea and one of its crew members, Richard Parker, became sick after drinking salt water. Faced with extreme desperation, the rest of the crew made the difficult decision to unalive and eat Parker before his condition worsened from disease. And that is why
Today we're going to be talking about the story of Edward Paisnell. This is Edward Paisnell, and during the day he was a seemingly normal person with a job as a construction worker, children, and a wife named Joanne. But by nightfall, he turned into somebody that no one had ever seen before. Edward Paisnell turned out to be a walking nightmare, where between the years of 1957 and 1971, he would move on to stalk, sodomize, and rape over 13 people in New Jersey. And not only that, his wife claimed that they were hardly even married. In fact, he kept his wardrobe annexed in another side of the house that she could not get to. But when he was arrested in 1971, the police forced entry inside to his house and figured out that what he was hiding from his wife were multiple random costumes that he wore to rape his victims, and also a satanic shrine that he had been hiding all along. And yes, if you're wondering, that's the costume he wore most of the time.
These are places humans should never swim. Up first is Bubbly Creek. This is an area of the Chicago River that used to be advised not to swim in. And there are several reasons for this. One of them is the disgusting runoff that will make its way into the river. Also discarded meat, food, and fecal matter. Over time, this stuff began to decay, leading to the bubbles that exist in this lake. This lake has become so toxic that fish can't even live in it. So if fish can't even live in it, humans should not step foot in it. So whatever you do, never swim in Bubbly Creek.
Hey, look, a pizza! You gotta let him into your house now. This is day 6 of talking about the spookiest places in the world, and today we're talking about Lake Lanier in Georgia. I'm going to go through some of the details here, but I covered this story in full depth on the latest episode of my podcast, so go listen to that for all of the details. Lake Lanier in Georgia is a man-made lake that was initially made to help stop flooding from the Chattahoochee River and to help have water and power supply for the city of Atlanta. But it had a controversial history from the start because the land it was built on was formerly known as Oscarville, a town that had very, very bad things happening in the early 1900s. Oscarville was a thriving Black community in the early 1900s, and it stayed this way until 2 unfortunate events led angry mobs to drive the Black community out. After that, Oscarville was essentially left as a ghost town, and when the Army Corps of Engineers wanted to build Lake Lanier in the late 1940s,